Hello there! Today I thought I would talk to you about something a little bit different, which is kind of my ratio of male to female authors, and I was going to talk you through some of the main male authors that I like, because there's not actually that many of them. I've got 4 to talk to you about, and to be honest, they're the only real male authors that I go out and seek, which is quite interesting. So there is a massive divide in the publishing industry. You don't need me to tell you that. It is a known fact that there are a lot more male authors than there are female authors, and there are also a lot more men that win awards and things like that. But me personally, my reading taste is pretty much 99.9% women, and I'm quite happy with that. I think given the struggles that female authors come across, they deserve, you know, a bit of attention from at least some of us. So I'm really happy with the fact that I mainly read female authors. There are a few reasons. I think predominantly female authors just write things that I care about more. They are more in tune with what I like, obviously, because they're females too. So yeah, they just tend to be more on point for what I enjoy in my writing. I also find that a lot of the time male authors do write for men, which, you know, you could say the same for women authors. I think a lot of the time they do write for women. But there's much more use of aggressive language, there's much more swearing. It's much more manny in general and laddie, and that's not for me. If a book has unnecessary swearing in it, it really grates on me. I can't say why, but I think it's kind of, in a way, swearing in a book is lazy. Like, I don't know, but in my language, in my use of language, I swear if the occasion calls for it, and it might just be the people I'm around, but personally I don't think that people actually use swear words that much. Certainly not many people will use them just every other word, but some male authors do kind of fall back on that as the sort of blokey attitude of a lot of their characters. My boyfriend is obsessed with James Ellroy, and he always tries to get me to read James Ellroy books, but I read a few pages and it's literally just, the characters just swear every other word, and it just, I can't be dealing with it. So yeah, generally male authors kind of grate on me in that sense. I'm not, you know, this is a blanket statement, obviously not all male authors are like that, but I find a lot of them. Irvine Welsh is one as well, and it's kind of difficult with him because obviously he writes about sort of the underground in Scotland and sort of the drug culture and things like that, and obviously people are going to swear and sort of do bad things more in that culture. So there is that, and also obviously in Trainspotting, which is the only book of his that I have read, he obviously writes it in Scottish dialect and things, and it is just the way the characters speak, and it's well done, but it's just not necessarily something that I enjoy in my writing. To be honest, I don't particularly want to change it. I am quite happy reading predominantly female authors. As I said, the writing itself aside, I am mostly drawn to female stories. But as I say, I have got 4 male authors to talk to you about today. These are actually some of my favourite authors, so even though I don't have that many male authors that I enjoy, the ones that I do enjoy get really high up on my ratings list, because I suppose I judge men more harshly, so the men that do impress me really impress me. Anyway, let's get straight into it. So I'm going to go from my least favourite of these to my most favourite. Obviously these are all some of my favourite authors, so to say that the least favourite is, you know, that's still, he's still right up there in my favourites, and let's not put him down. But the first person I'm going to talk to you about is F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think the main reason that I'm feeling a bit distant from him at the moment is possibly because I haven't read him in a very long time, but I have bought his new short story collection, which was released this year, which is stories that were never published, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that. I really enjoy F. Scott Fitzgerald. I've got The Beautiful and the Damned here because it is the prettiest copy that I own, but I would say that The Great Gatsby is actually my favourite of his, be that cliche or not. I think his other works aren't as polished. I think The Great Gatsby, possibly because it's shorter, just packs more punch. F. Scott Fitzgerald's a funny one because his plots are not his strong point at all. You know, he does write about the same thing over and over again, and for the most part, that is his life. He just kind of looks at high society in America in the 40s, the drinking and partying that went on, and the toll that took on the people who were involved, including him and his wife. But what I really love about F. Scott Fitzgerald, regardless of the fact that most of his novels follow the same sort of thread and all kind of blur into one once you've read a few of them, is the fact that he is just one of the most effortlessly talented writers I have ever read. Some of his character descriptions are just so good that you literally have to go back and read them a few times to just appreciate how skillfully they are done, and he just, honestly, he blows my mind. I think his writing is phenomenal. If you haven't read him yet, I would definitely recommend starting with The Great Gatsby, and if you enjoy that a lot, maybe go on to his other works. I've got The Beautiful and the Damned, and Tender is the Night as well. It's another one of his novels, and obviously he's got quite a few short stories out and about. I just think his skill is just phenomenal, and he really is one of those authors that when you read him, it just seems like he is effortlessly just flowing out this phenomenal prose. Like, obviously it wasn't effortlessly, I think he had quite a struggle, but oh, so good. Then I have got Michael Cunningham with The Hours. Now, I kind of questioned myself putting this in here because it's the only Michael Cunningham I have read. I don't even know if he has any other books, but I read this a few months ago and I have not been able to forget it since. I absolutely adored it, and actually what I enjoyed most about this is the fact that all of the characters in here are female. We follow 3 women through the sort of trials and tribulations and a sort of emotionally distressed times for them, and I just feel like Michael Cunningham, his language is phenomenal. You know, no matter what he would have been writing about, I would have enjoyed it because he is so good with words. But what I really enjoyed about him is the fact that he wrote women characters better than most women writers I have read. I think he's one of the most concise and on-point writers in terms of female distress that I've ever read, which is astounding given that he is a man. I just think he was really talented in getting underneath the skin of how women feel and what they face in day-to-day life, including dealing with marriage and lost love and things like that. I would urge anyone to read this. I think if you're skeptical of male authors, I would definitely recommend picking this up, and it may well change your mind. Then I am going to talk about John Steinbeck. I've got East of Eden here because it was the first one I found, but I actually prefer Grapes of Wrath. That said, East of Eden is also phenomenal, so I'll go with this. Basically, I adore John Steinbeck. I have yet to read anything of his that I haven't liked. Much the same as F. Scott Fitzgerald, his writing is just so rich and good, and what I really like about John Steinbeck, and which, you know, not everyone's gonna like, is the fact that he is so grim and bleak, and his language is just so dripping with misery. I just adore it. On my copy of Grapes of Wrath, actually, on the back, it says about how John Steinbeck wants to rip his readers' nerves to shreds, and he literally does that. Like, he puts you through the ringer, and he does not hold back. Like, his books are almost emotionally painful, but they are fantastic, and I would recommend reading them. A lot of them are obviously set in quite dreary American backdrops. A lot of them are focused in sort of things that happened in American history, like the Great Depression and stuff like that, so obviously they're going to be pretty heavy. But they are just so good. They're not the most plot heavy books. Like East of Eden, for example, is a sort of family saga. And it's all kind of tied back up into the story of Adam and Eve, and also Bible stories of Cain and Abel. It's quite slow, and it kind of just looks at the relationships between people, and the relationships between family members, but it's so good. The same for Grapes of Wrath. It's more about the people that are involved than the storyline itself, but I think that's absolutely right for the stories that he tells. I don't think that being plot heavy would help them at all, and actually they're still really fast reads and they still keep you hooked. At least they did for me, and I have to say I've never heard anything bad about East of Eden especially, so I would just recommend reading him. If you're skeptical of getting started, Of Mice and Men is a very small book that you could give it a go if you're not sure. I can't say much about the writing in that. I did study it in school. I can't remember anything about it. I do need to get back to it, but my copy that I've got from school is completely tattered and falling apart, so I need to really buy a new one and read that. But yeah, I would recommend starting there if you are not sure, because as I say, it's short, so it's not too much of a commitment, and from what I remember, it's a pretty good taster of John Steinbeck's writing, so give it a go. Then finally, I am sure some of you have already guessed who this is going to be. It had to be John McGregor, didn't it? Because just, it doesn't get much better for male writing than John McGregor. It really doesn't. So, John McGregor, I've spoken enough about him. I don't think I need to say too much. If you want to know a bit more about his stories and things, actually, Katie from Books and Things did an author spotlight on him a few days ago, so I'll link that down below. It was, like, just such a joyous video for me to watch. And it just lets you know everything that you need to know about John McGregor, and she also goes through all the books and things, so check that out if you want to know a bit more. But basically, John McGregor is a contemporary author who has a really experimental literary style. And I think it is kind of a Marmite situation. You either love him or you hate him. I can understand why people would hate him. For example, in If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things, which is my favourite by him, the characters don't have names, which I know annoys a lot of people, but I really loved. So instead of giving them names, John McGregor describes them from physical pointers, or maybe the house that they live in, or the man in number 20. But you do, over the novel, come to know who everyone is from their markers. So there's like a man with scarred hands, and you learn why he has scarred hands. And I just think it was a really effective way of telling a story, and a really different way of telling a story. He also, in this book, plays around with punctuation. He doesn't use speech marks and things like that. If that all sounds annoying to you, I would still recommend giving it a go, because normally I wouldn't like novels that play around too much with structure, because I think that sometimes they can be quite heavy to read. But I did adore this a lot. I have to say every book by him is pretty good. My least favourite is So Many Ways to Begin, because I think it was the most sort of mainstream book of all his reads. I think it was the least experimental. So if you're sort of worried about jumping into the experimental stuff, you could start there. I've also read this year Even the Dogs by him, which I liked just as much as I liked If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things, to be honest. But I would say that I prefer this one because it's the first one I read, so you always do prefer your first. But I would actually say that Even the Dogs has a much more... It is experimental, it's very experimental, but in a much more accessible way. I think this is kind of right up there. It could be a bit too much for some people. So I think starting in another place with him if you're nervous is a good idea. But if not, I would say jump right in. This is a phenomenal book, and if you really get behind it and don't go into it thinking it's going to be pretentious and twaddle, because it's not, it's just good writing, it's just really bloody good writing. So that is all of the men that I wanted to talk to you about. I hope you've enjoyed this, and please let me know down below how many Men to Women you read, and also any of your favourite male authors that you think I should check out, and I will see you next time. Bye!